What's going on, guys? It's Cooper Codes, and in this video we're going to be looking at Supabase authentication to create a login system that can be used by all the different social providers. We're going to set up Supabase and create this component here and also integrate the Discord login as well. In this video, I'm only going to be showing how to use Discord, but I'll also show you guys how to add more and understanding the process of adding OAuth applications on top of Supabase. So for example, we can sign in with an email, press the sign in button, and we're also using React Router to bring us to the success route, and we'll see we have a logged in user. If we inspect element here, we can go to the console and we can see that I've fully authenticated with Supabase. Earlier, I created an account, and you guys can see every single created account under the authentication page in Supabase. We're also able to log out our users and then, boom, be able to log in again. And then I'll just show this real quick. I can also authorize with Discord, and it will send me to the same page, and again, show my user object. Let's get into setting up Supabase. We can get started by going to supabase.com and pressing Start Your Project in the top right. It might ask you to sign in and authenticate through GitHub. Eventually, you're going to get to app.supabase.com where we can start our project. So press the New Project button here. I'm going to name this project Login Auth, and I'm just going to generate the password here. We're not going to work with the Supabase database in this example, but make sure to save this password just in case. But make sure to save this password if you want to use that in the future. I'm going to select the region closest to me, so shout out to the West Coast. You can just use the free plan, and then I'm going to create my new project. So as you guys can see, Supabase has a bunch of functionality, but for this video, we are going to be working with specifically just authentication. We can go to authentication by going to the left here and then pressing on the authentication here. It's these two little people. We can then go to the settings under configuration here. There's a bunch of general settings if you guys are interested in looking at this, but we're going to keep everything as default up here. I'm going to add a domain to our redirect URLs, and I'm going to make one say HTTPS localhost 3000/success. This is the route we'll use for successful logins. You guys will see we currently have email authentication on, which is great news. In order to get the URL and the public key of Supabase, we want to go to this gear icon in the bottom left here. This is the settings of your Supabase project. We can then press on the API here, and I'm going to take a little notepad just so we can note these down. You can use a text file if you like. We want to copy this URL here, so I'm just going to say Supabase URL is equal to this. Then we also want the project API keys. We want this anon public one, so you can copy it here, bring that over. And guys, I know this is a bunch of setup, but we're also going to go and look over at Discord now so we can get the keys that we need for the Discord login as well. In order to enable Discord, we're going to go to discord.com/developers/applications. We need to make a Discord application to enable Discord login. We can start the application by saying new application in the top right. And when you go to this webpage, it should make you log in, but log in the top right if you're not already there. But press new application. I'm just going to name it Login Auth. So you should be sent to a general information here. We then want to go to OAuth 2. Under OAuth 2, we're going to have two incredibly important things. The client ID, which we can bring to our notepad. So I'm going to say Discord client ID. Just give me that. We also want the client secret, so we can copy this client secret here. And then we're going to go back to our Supabase, and we want to go back to that authentication page where we saw all the different integrations. So go to the two people on the left, go to settings. Now you're in the authentication settings, and we can scroll down. So if we want to enable Discord, we can open up Discord and see all the different things they want us to have for Discord to work. So we can press this Discord enable here, and it's going to want a client ID and a client secret. So we can bring the ID and the secret from our notepad, get the secret as well. And you'll see there's this redirect URL as well. This redirect URL is actually defined by Supabase, and our Discord application needs to know about it. So let's copy this redirect URL, go to our Discord portal, and then add a redirect under OAuth 2. We can then paste this in here, and then we can save the changes. The reason why we have to use a Supabase link to redirect is that Supabase is kind of like a middleman between our application, Supabase, and then any OAuth provider. So if you guys are integrating a different OAuth provider, for example, you want to make sure that you fill out all the different things that are required from Supabase here. And if there's a redirect URL, you want to make sure your outside application, for example, Discord, knows about this redirect URL. So now that we have everything it needs, we can now save. And now whenever we use this Supabase application, Discord is enabled for login. And just to give a random example, let's take a look at GitHub, for example. Same exact thing. We would figure out how to set up with GitHub, and put the client ID and secret in here, and also make sure that GitHub has access to this redirect URL. Same thing. And just for one more example, let's take a look at Twitch. Same exact thing, right? Things like Azure can be strange, but pretty much you just need an extra URL. And look, they even say it's like optional. So you're going to follow a very similar process to how we set up Discord for any of these other providers. Now we have everything we need to set up for our Supabase and Discord. Let's get into creating our React application. So I'm going to get started by opening up an empty folder in Visual Studio Code and then saying npx create-react-app with client to start our React application. We can enter our React folder by saying cd client once that's all done. For this video, we're going to be working with 3 different packages, so we can say npm install to start installing those. The first one is @supabase/auth-ui-react. This is a pre-built component that's going to help us make a nice looking authorization thing pretty fast. You can also say @supabase/supabase-js. And then finally, we're also going to have react-router-dom to handle the different routes to the regular localhost and then also to localhost 3000/success. So I'm going to go over to app.js under the source folder, gonna delete everything except the div and the header here. We're not going to use that logo anymore, so we can get rid of that. And now I'm going to go and create 2 pretty basic pages for our React application to use. So we can make a folder here and call it pages. These are just components that we want to point certain routes to. For example, localhost, which is a slash at the end, is going to go to a certain page, and localhost/success is going to go to a different page. So those are the pages we're defining here. We are going to have a login page.js, and we can actually copy what this function app looks like right here. Go over here, I'm just going to name it function login, and then export default login on the bottom. And we can also make a success page as well with a success page.js. And we can take the same exact login here, bring it over, and make a success component. In the success component, I'm just going to make a little h1 saying success. I made these components first because now we are going to route to show different information for different routes. So let's go over to app.js and get started with our routing. We can start by importing everything we're going to need for the routing in React. For example, we can import browser router as router. We can import routes and also route from React router DOM. These are just some components which allow us to make routing functionality super simple. For example, we can have the router on the very outside. So a router is kind of like, an internet router. Everything inside of here is now going to move the information around. We can define the routes of a certain router by saying routes like this. And inside of routes is where we can use the route component. The route has a path, which we are just going to say slash. So that'd be like, localhost 3000, for example. And the element is going to be equal to a component or a page, for example, which we are going to define in a second. Then we're also going to have another route pointing to a success path. We can import the pages by going to the top and saying import login from /pages. So we're saying go to that pages folder and then go get the component out of the login page. And we can do the exact same import for the success component from the success page. And so down here, we can pass in the component directly. So I can say login for this guy and then success for this guy. And so right now, login page has no text, but we should expect the success page to say something simple. What did I say? It was just a simple h1 success. So let's start our application and see if that routing is working. All right, so we have our localhost 3000 here, which is showing nothing, which is a good sign. It means that we're probably being routed to login. And if we go to /success, we're going to see a success here, which is great. That means we're being routed to 2 different components based off the URL, which is great news. So let's get started and go to loginpage.js, where we're going to work on creating that initial login component. We are going to start by importing a couple things from Supabase, which are going to help us out. The first one is import create client from @supabase/supabase-js. Create client is what allows us to establish a connection with our React application and then all the Supabase code that we want to use. We are also going to import auth and then theme supo, which is going to give us a nice looking auth component that is built by Supabase from supabase/auth-ui react. We can initialize our client by saying const supabase is equal to create client, and it's going to take in 2 parameters, the Supabase URL and then that public key that we saved before. So I have my URL saved right here, so I'm going to save it. So I'm going to grab it here, paste it in right there. Then I'm also going to take this public key right here, copy that, and bring it over to my React application as the second parameter. And that's all it takes to initialize Supabase. In order to handle the event where the user logs in, we can actually use the Supabase client we just created. We can say Supabase, which gives us access to a bunch of authorization functions. and we can use the .onAuth state change. So this is if the user signs out, if the user logs in, this event will get pulled. So we can make an asynchronous callback here that's going to take in an event. We can then define what do we want to do with this event. The event's going to be the string, and if the event we're being passed in is not signed out, we are then going to navigate the user to the success URL. So we want to forward to success URL, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Otherwise, we want to forward the user to just the regular localhost 3000 so they can go to the login page, for example. In order to forward a user to a URL, for example, I'm going to use something called useNavigate. We can import useNavigate above from React Router DOM. So useNavigate helps us with the React routing. And we have to define useNavigate as it's a React hook. So we can say const navigate is equal to useNavigate like this. And this gives us access to the functionality to kind of move our user around and send them to different links, for example. If we want to send the user to the success URL, all we have to do is say navigate to the /success path. And if we want to send our user to just regular localhost 3000, since we're on localhost 3000, we can just navigate them to /, and that's going to take us to that localhost 3000 link. And so pretty much what this code is doing is it's allowing us to move the user to the success if they do anything which is not sign out. Now we can initialize this auth component from right here. This is a pre-made UI component which Supabase gives us access to, and it has a bunch of different properties which allows you to customize what this component looks like. For example, we need to set the client that this auth is looking at by saying Supabase client is equal to the Supabase variable that we created above. We can also change the appearance of the client. I'm going to use this pre-made theme provided to us by Supabase called theme Supa. I'm also going to add theme equals dark on top of this. It makes the text a little bit lighter. And importantly, I'm going to add providers is equal to curly braces and then an object. You can see all the different providers here. So if you're not just implementing Discord, for example, you can make this a list of all the different providers. I'm implementing Discord, so I'm going to put Discord in here. Let's go to our React application right now and see what it looks like. Bang, so you guys can see we have the full UI component already created. Just to give an example, if I also wanted to add in Facebook as a provider, I could put that in here, refresh my application, and you'll see I also have the option to sign in with Facebook. This isn't going to work because the provider is not enabled, but if you enable this provider in your Supabase backend, you're going to be able to sign in with Facebook through this little sign in with Facebook button. But we're not doing that in this tutorial, so I'm going to remove that and keep Discord. And so right now, if we log in, we are going to be able to get navigated to the /success path. I'm going to create an account that we can test with. So it says don't have an account, sign up. I'm going to press this, and now we are in the sign up code, which is something that auth pretty much automates for us. So it gives us access to this switching around. So type in an email address and password, and then press sign up. Then I'm going to tell you to check your email for the confirmation link. So go and pretty much confirm this email. So I'm over here in my email, I can press confirm right here, and then boom, it's going to actually instantly log me in, but we don't have any logic to actually handle the user yet. So we can't see information from the user here quite yet, but that's some cool Supabase functionality is it actually instantly logged in my email, which is pretty cool. Now we can get started by making this success page console.log the actual user's information and also give the user the option to sign out. To make our lives easier, I would go to the top of your login page, copy all the imports and this little Supabase create client and bring it over to the top of your success page. So your success should look something like this. I'm also going to import React, and I'm also going to import the use effect and use state from React. Firstly, we are going to use the use state just to manage the user that we're going to get from Supabase. So we can make a very simple const user and set user is equal to use state and initially make it an empty object. We're also going to be forwarding the user back and forth eventually. So I'm just going to define that const navigate is equal to use navigate now. This is just like how we defined in the other page. It's going to allow us to move the user to different URLs. And importantly here, I'm going to create a use effect. One thing that use effect helps us out with is it allows us to run code right when a user gets sent to a link or on their first render. And so the actual effect can be defined by an arrow function, and then you have curly braces that are going to define all the logic of that function. Then at the end of the curly braces, you're going to do a comma because now you're going into the second parameter, and I'm going to create an empty array. This empty array pretty much means that there's no reason for the use effect to ever run again because you can use use effect where it's like if the user ever changes, run the effect again. But we don't want any logic like that. So if we make it empty, that means use effect is only ever going to run once. And so on this initial run, we want to make an asynchronous function inside of our use effect that I'm going to call getUserData. Inside of getUserData, we are going to ask Supabase for the current logged in user. So we can say await Supabase, which we defined with this client above here, .auth.getUser, .then, because it's getUser is going to return a promise, and so we can work with that promise and say .then, take the value out of the promise, and then we can do an arrow here to say, okay, here is some logic to be defined to how we want to work with this value. The value is then going to have a .data property, and the .data property is going to have a .user, which is going to be that big user object of all the different things pertaining to our certain user. And so I'm going to make some interesting syntax here. So just in case the .user part doesn't exist, we can do some JavaScript to kind of get around that. So we can say if value.data ? .user. That means if value.data is undefined, we avoid the error of saying undefined.user. That's going to give us an error. And so this question mark says, hey, if this stuff's undefined, don't even try and get the .user property out of it. But if the .user property is there, then we can make an if statement to say, okay, now we can set the user object that we have above here to the value.data.user. And we can also console.log that value.data.user so we can just see that being logged in our console. And so when we use asynchronous functions inside of useEffect, we always have to call them so we actually run the logic. Because right now this is just a function that's not being called. So to define it, we can call it here. So this means when our application initially loads, it's going to try and get the user data of the person currently logged in. So we can go to our React application and check this out. So Supabase is actually smart and it's going to persist your login, which means you can like refresh the page and the user is going to stay there. If you don't have a user object and it's just showing empty, I would go back to localhost 3000 and then log in again. But we do have a user in our session, so we can just go to /success and see that I'm logged in here. Right now, there's no way to currently log out our user. So let's get working on creating that logout button. We can make an asynchronous function called signoutUser. I'm making it asynchronous because we are going to use await when working with Supabase. For example, await supabase.auth.signout. And this can also return an error. I'm not going to do the error handling for this error here, but just so you guys know how to get the error out of Supabase, you can use a syntax like this. And when the user gets signed out, I also want to navigate them back to the home page or back to the login page that we created before. So this navigate / is going to take the user back to that initial page we created. To make a button for the user to sign out, we can go down here and say button. We can make the text say sign out. Then we can define an on click here. We can make an arrow here. And then we are going to tell the arrow to run the functionality of sign out user with a function called at the end there. So if we go over to a React application right now, we should be able to sign out. Amazing. One thing though is if we go back to /success, even though we're signed out, and you'll see we're getting errors in attempting to get the user because the user doesn't exist, we want to be able to handle these errors. So let's say someone wanted to go to like a dashboard or something that should be user secured. We can handle that logic in our success page. So let's go do that. We can pretty much assume that if this user state right here is an empty object, we currently don't have a user from Supabase because our page is always going to load this useEffect right away. So inside of our React application, we can make a little object.keys of the user is not equal to 0. And so this is just a way of checking if a object actually has properties in it or not. Any data inside of it is a more simple way to think about it. And so if this is true, then we want to show the success stuff here. And if it's not true, so the little colon in the ternary statement there is going to be the else, then we can even show some stuff like you're not supposed to be at this page. You manually went to the success page and here's a way to get out. So we can make a little h1 saying that the user is not logged in. And because we already have access to navigate, we can make a little cool button that's going to navigate the user for us. So we can say button, go back home. We can then set an on click, which is going to work with navigate. So we can pass it into this little arrow here and then define some logic, JavaScript logic here, and say navigate to that regular base route so they can go back to a page where they can log in. This is also helpful if you have like a dashboard or something and maybe you're a financial application and your user's tokens only last like 30 minutes and the user gets logged out while they're on your site. This is going to allow them to just click on a button, go back and log in again. Oh, and my bad. So keys is actually an array of all the keys in the object. We can go to .length to see that it's not equal to 0. My bad. Let's go see this in our application. So we're getting a user is not logged in, and we can go back home here. It's going to bring us back to that initial login page. And so Supabase is kind of like magic. It handles an email login pretty much the same as it would handle a Discord login here. So we can press sign in with Discord, press authorize, sign in with whatever Discord account you have, And that is still going to authenticate our users. And whatever platform you use, Supabase handles all the logic. As long as you have your client ID, your client secret, and the redirect URIs are correct, you're 100% good to go. You're always going to be able to authenticate users and, as you'll see, get all the different user data. And you guys can also see that if you go to your Supabase authentication, so go to the left here and then go under users, you're going to be able to see every single user that logs into your application. So this is just a super basic video on Supabase, getting you guys up to speed. If you guys are interested in working with Supabase and more in the future, let me know. Thanks so much for watching.